Okay, so we got our numbers, and in looking at this, I'm thinking I might want to do one thing. I'm going to go like this. I'm just holding my mouse down, my left mouse button, and I'm running over here like this. Then I'm going to press my right bracket key to select connected, and then I'm going to press the H key to scale, and I'm just going to scale these down a little bit. Just thought they might have taken away from the numbers a bit. Okay. Spacebar turns off the scale tool. Question mark deselects. S to resave those. Okay, so I wanted to create just a couple of more elements in case I need them. We've often called these nirnies back in the day, back in the Lightwave days, way back, a long time ago. So I'm going to create some of these. Nirnies also can be, little wisps as well. But I think what I want to do, let me press the W key, okay? And this opens up my statistics panel. And let's say you want to select something that already has a surface applied. Here's the field dashes, and the football XOs. Those are surfaces we created earlier. If you open your surface editor, you'll see them right there. Okay, but I want to select all of those. And instead of coming in here with the polygon selected and trying to go, forget that. This is why it's also good to apply particular surface names. Even if you're going to use different surface, even if you use the same surface property on different elements, you could very easily just name everything with the same exact surface. But it often helps just to give it its own unique name, just even for selection purposes. You can always copy and paste the surface, but it's hard to reselect if you need to. So when you press the W key, get that statistics panel. It says polygon statistics because I'm in polygons. If I'm in edges or points, it'll jump to that mode as well. But in here, for polygon statistics, under surface, I'm going to go to football field dashes, then click the plus. You'll see all of them select. Command C to copy. All right. Shift N as in new. Okay. New object. Shift N. Okay. And then Command V to paste. Now I've got just these lines by themselves. And I think I want just one row. So I'm going to run my mouse up like that. Press the right bracket key to select connected. And I could delete or just cut. Okay. F2 to center these. And I'm going to press Control S and call this line O dashes or something like that. And that's it. I think that's all of our elements we need just for now, because those few things we made are going to make up our entire animation that I showed you in the very beginning. Was that video 2? All right, so we can either go to each one of these and send them to layout, or we can just load them up in layout. And because we're going to be using each one of these things maybe multiple times, I'm just going to go straight to layout. So let's do that. So over here in the top right, switch to layout. Now, if these aren't coming up, that means your hub, this little guy, is not running. Okay, so that's something you might want to check out. Make sure the hub's running. At worst, make sure your Lightwave is running and jump over to there. Go away. Okay, switch to layout. Here's our little layout, Lightwave 9.5. Okay, looks pretty much the same as 9.3. All right. The only thing different in here is that I have F Prime installed from Worley Labs. Okay, this is a third-party plugin. It's not part of Lightwave. Okay, but it's one that I use on a regular basis. I don't work for Worley. We have no deals. I'm just telling you, it's just something that I use. So might be something to check out. And basically, what it is an interactive preview renderer, very much like Lightwave's own Viper, which is right here under the render tab, but a little bit different because it's a little more interactive and pretty much shows everything in your scene. Okay, but we're not going to use it for right now. So, again, hoping you are familiar with the Lightwave interface. If you press the D key, you get your preferences. Okay, we're leaving everything pretty much the same. My bounding box threshold sets about 50,000. All right, and that's going to allow me to see my items drawn on screen. I don't remember what this defaults to because I changed it. But if when you move an item, it jumps to a bounding box rather than staying drawn, okay, you might want to up this threshold. But that also depends on your system and your video card, so be careful with that. There's a number of new things in here for 9.5. This flip H and flip Y. A couple of these things in here are all very new, rule of thirds and so on. And all of these are covered in our What's New in 9.5 video. I don't want to take time here to do these because this is all about making these cool looking titles. There is a little handle thing which is kind of cool. We may go in here and change that if need be. And our defaults, our scene length is 60. We're going to make these suckers 10 seconds, 300 frames. And let's make them broadcast res, US that is, NTSC. I know we've got a lot of our international friends that have ordered. Hello. But you can make that PAL if you need. Okay, it's totally up to you. But we're going to go NTSC. That gives us a 0.9 aspect ratio, and that gives us a rectangular shaped pixel. Okay. When you render to computer, just if you're going to play back on the computer only, you might want that 1.0. So you got to consider about where you're going with this final resolution. But we'll go with D1 for right now, NTSC video. All right. Field of view is 24 millimeters. We might change that. All right. That is what our camera's angle is. And as far as our paths, we're going to leave this all alone right now. I think maybe I'll change it to desktop, broadcast, projects. Okay, so that is going to my projects folder. So when I load scenes, they come in from the scenes folder. Load images and load objects, they come in from those particular folders as well. But auto detect is on, so as soon as I would load something, Lightwave would catch it for me. All right, everything else is pretty much left alone for right now. Left button item select is on, and we'll just keep that as is. Okay, excuse me, that hub likes to come up every time. All right, got one light in the scene, one camera in the scene. All right, and you can see that grid in there. That's part of 9.5. Let's start loading some elements. It's the first thing we're going to do. And I'm going to come over to items, load. See the load category there? Click object. And we've got our football field. All right, we're going to use version 2. That was our last version. All right, let's load that up first. We're going to do just a few things at a time. Typically when I'm setting things up, however, I load up everything. I can hold the command key or your control key, and you can just kind of, load up all of them at once. But we're just going to do one at a time. All right, there's our cool looking football field. Now, you got a couple options here. And by the way, I just pressed 6 on my numeric keypad, which jumps me to the camera view. And I do that without even thinking because it's the camera that renders. I know a lot of you know this, but if you're in perspective view, I have often had people kind of come in here and go, yeah, that's how I want to render it. I come up here to render, and I hit render frame, and they see that. I go, well, that's not what I set. That's because Lightwave renders from the camera by default. So I just instinctively hit 6 on my keyboard, and I get my camera set. And then I can choose move, and I can move it up and move it around. But getting back to this. Now, you've got two options here, and it really depends on your own workflow and how you like to work. You can go ahead and set up your surfaces, or you can start putting your elements into the scene. In this particular case, I think I'm just going to put some surfaces on. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of come up here with the camera. I just moved it in. Right mouse will move it down. Spacebar jumps to rotate, and then with the left mouse, I can rotate it around. Okay. Open up my surface editor. I'll pull it aside so you can see it. Okay. Football field. Just this blue, right? What I really want to do is create more of a soft blue like that. Yeah, kind of a grayish blue. Okay. It's not going to be luminous. And its diffuse value, meaning how much light it's taking from the scene. If I bring that down to 0, you can see it just blacks out, meaning it's not catching any light. Let's make that about 80. Specularity for the amount of shine, jack that up to about 60. Glossiness, well, if we make it really low, it's going to be a flat gloss. If we make it high, it's going to be a high gloss. And I'm thinking we want to go somewhere in between there, maybe something like 40. Okay. Reflection, about 20%, and I've said this in other videos, reflection and diffuse should equal about 100, but it can vary depending on what you're trying to do. And we also want this to be about 85% transparent. Okay. Now my OpenGL transparency is on by default. If your scene does not become transparent, press the D key and check your settings under OpenGL. And over here there is OpenGL transparency. Where are you? Transparency channel, and then right here, OpenGL transparency. Okay, so I have mine on. If it's hello hub, if it starts taxing your system, you might want to turn that off. whenever you put a reflection on, you're going to want to tell the surface what to reflect, right? That's under environment. Now, by default, it says ray tracing. Okay, and ray tracing is when Lightwave calculates the bounced rays of light, meaning it's going to calculate every ray and bounce it off this surface, and we told it to reflect, so it's going to calculate the reflection rays. If we have shadows on, it's going to calculate the shadow rays, and so on. Now, the backdrop right now is going to be a little dark, so it might not be very good to do ray tracing and backdrop. Instead, we're going to do ray tracing, so whatever so you can see it, and spherical map. So it's going to blend it, okay? And the reflection map, which is the spherical map, the reflection map I want to use, okay, I have to pull out from my archives here, which I'll put in your files. I think for right now, we'll go to reflections. The fractal reflections, believe it or not, which has been in there forever, is always a good one to use. Something to start out with. Okay, and basically what's happening is that this image is being wrapped invisibly, sort of like wallpaper, around the entire scene. So wherever this object moves, it's reflecting this image. Okay, but again, think of this image wrapped spherically. So it's only going to each part of this is only going to reflect a portion of this. It's not the whole thing at once like it's mapped on. Okay, so actually let's make this about 70 and then hit a tab key to about 30. Okay? And that's that. I'm going to put a little smoothing on. I'll show you why. If I take my camera, let's click into here. Camera is selected at the bottom. I'm telling Lightwave that's what I want to work with. And I'm going to move here. Right mouse down. That's why. See that corner right there? Okay. Turn my smoothing off. I get those facets. Turn it on. I get that. But that's too round. I don't want to do that. And that's going to create some shading errors. So here's what you do. Bring that threshold to 0 in the surface editor. And then slowly, it should probably end up about 20, but slowly just kind of bring it up. Maybe not even that much. And just before it starts to cross over itself like that, there you go. So 20 or 30. It's enough smoothing to smooth out the facets. It's a Phong shading, P-H-O-N-G, but it still keeps that sharp edge. Okay? So often when you have smoothing and your surface looks really weird and your reflections look weird, most likely that default 90 degree, 89 degree smoothing is too much. So bring that down to about 30, 25, 30%. Okay? So now I've got that surface. I'm going to come over here to File, Save All Objects. When I do that, the surfaces are now saved with the scene. And actually, the surfaces are saved among themselves, which is kind of important if I ever want to use this object again somewhere else. Now, with the football field, I'm going to right-click and choose Copy. And then for the dashes, right-click and paste. Puts the exact same surface on those dashes, which is fine. But then I can come in here to the color and maybe make those darker or lighter, whatever I want. Maybe I'll make them just white, and maybe we'll make them a little less transparent, like 50%, just so they have a little bit different look, and maybe even give them a little luminosity so they kind of pop. Okay, now it's not looking like much, but you'll see. It's going to look pretty cool in a minute. All right, football, right-click, and paste the same surface, plopping it right down. And that also carries over that smoothing. So if you noticed earlier, those were a little bit faceted as well. Now they're not. Okay. Now, for the XOs, I think I'm going to keep that a very simple transparency, about 25%. And for the color, I'm going to make these like a little bit richer, deeper blue. Something like that. Okay. And then we'll save all objects again, just to save those surface changes. And while we're at it, Control S, let's save a scene as, we'll call this Sports Setup. And this is actually our opening. I'm going to show you how to do a bumper next. Sports Setup. Okay, I always do that. I always do a setup scene before anything's moving. All right. And our default light, there's our light right there, light. Telling Lightwave if we want to work with it, hit the properties. Our default light is white. It's a distant light. Okay? And shadows are on as ray trace. In order for shadows to show up when I render, I need to go to the Render tab, Render Globals, under the Render tab, hit Shadows. And remember we put reflections on in the surface editor? When you have ray trace reflections on, you need to tell the render engine to calculate those. So that has to be on. So I'll shut these down. Just close those. I'll press S to save the scene. And then I'm going to press F9. That is going to render a frame. Now look what happened. It's the same shot again. Why is that? Well, if you notice, I moved my camera, but I didn't keyframe it. Okay, and this is something we're going to be doing throughout this course. Okay. Now you might have had auto key on, and auto key tells Lightwave, and I know it's probably basic for a lot of you. Tells Lightwave stay here at this point in time. Okay, so auto key automatically has created a keyframe. Okay. So let's do that. Move that here. There's our camera. Our light is default. We haven't even moved our light. And now we'll press F9 again to render. And now it renders in place. Okay, so we created some transparency. Created some reflections. Put a little bit of color on. And what you're seeing here is the calculation that normally does take a little while because of that transparency. And that is the one downfall of a scene like this. Because the transparency can really just add to it, but still is only 23 seconds. Okay, so there's the beginning part of our scene. So some simple objects that actually starting to look pretty cool. This is the fractal reflection. See the tone and the gray and the black and everything else. But because the ground, or I should say the football field, has ray trace reflections on, it also reflects these letters. Okay, and just gives it another added element. I think I might take the luminosity off of these dashes. I don't think it's needed. Okay, we'll just keep them as white. Okay, and then from there you can see even here on the sides of these as well. Okay, the reflection looks really nice. So I'm going to save all objects, and we're going to move on to start building more elements with this football field.